The lights don't just come on in Studio 6B, they ignite. A low electric hum crawls through the floor, up the legs of every chair, into the rib cage of the room itself. The audience doesn't know it yet, but something is already wrong. Not loud wrong. Not obvious. The dangerous kind of wrong. The kind that hides behind smiles and timing cues and perfectly rehearsed laughter. Jimmy Fallon steps out first, clapping, grinning, riding the rhythm of applause like a seasoned conductor. The band hits the beat. The cameras glide. Everything looks safe. Familiar. Comfortable. Then Dove Cameron walks out. And the temperature changes. Before we go any further, right now, if you're drawn to stories where celebrity polish cracks, where interviews turn into psychological chess matches, where one sentence can detonate a carefully built image, subscribe to Fame and Frame. Like this video, drop a comment if you feel that tension already, and stay with us. Because what unfolds tonight is not what anyone signed up for. Dove smiles as she waves, but it doesn't quite reach her eyes. It's the kind of smile actors master early, the shield smile. Beautiful, controlled, practiced. Her dress catches the light like armor disguised as silk. She sits across from Jimmy, legs crossed, posture flawless. The applause swells, then fades. The band softens. The cameras settle. A beat. Jimmy leans forward, cue cards in hand, playful tilt to his head. Dove Cameron, everybody. It's so good to have you here. She nods. Thanks for having me. Her voice is calm. Too calm. The audience laughs lightly when Jimmy tosses out the first easy line. Something about her busy year, her music, her evolution. It's warm-up banter. This is how it always starts. A runway. A slow taxi before takeoff. But Dove doesn't relax. She listens. Really listens. And that's when the first crack appears. Not in what's said, but in what isn't. Jimmy jokes about her reinvention. About how fans love every version of her. The crowd chuckles. On the surface, it's praise. Compliment wrapped in humor. Dove's smile freezes for half a second too long. Most people miss it. The cameras almost do. But there's a flicker. Something sharp flashes behind her eyes, like a door slamming shut somewhere deep inside her. Yeah, she says slowly. Every version. She lets the word sit there. The audience laughs again, unsure why. Jimmy nods, sensing nothing, or pretending not to. You've grown up in front of everyone. That can't be easy, right? Another safe question. Another soft pitch. Dove inhales. You can hear it if you're paying attention. The mic catches the breath before the answer. It's interesting, she says. Interesting. The word lands heavier than it should. The band stays quiet. Jimmy tilts his head, still smiling, but now there's a micro pause. He senses resistance, maybe even danger, but this is his territory. He presses on. You've been so open lately, about identity, about pressure, about expectations. Fans really connect to that honesty. Dove's fingers tighten around the arm of her chair. Honesty, she repeats gently. There it is again. That echo. That subtle reframing. Like she's taking his words and turning them over, examining the edges. The audience shifts. A few murmurs. Someone coughs. Dove looks out, not at Jimmy, but past him. Toward the crowd. Toward the cameras. Toward millions of unseen eyes. You know, she says, it's funny how people say they want honesty, until it makes them uncomfortable. The room stills. Jimmy laughs quickly, a soft deflection laugh. That's true. Yeah, people love honesty, selective honesty. The band taps a light sting. The moment almost floats away. Almost. Dove turns back to him. Her smile is gone now. Not replaced by anger, by clarity. But that's the thing, she says. I've spent most of my life being selectively honest. Because that's what works. That's what keeps things smooth. Jimmy nods, encouraging. Sure, that's show business. Dove's eyes lock onto his. And whose smoothness are we talking about? She asks. The question doesn't sound hostile. That's what makes it dangerous. A ripple moves through the audience. Jimmy blinks once. Just once. A professional recalibration. Well, I mean everyone's, right? He says lightly. It's a collaboration. Dove tilts her head. Mirrors his posture. The power shifts subtly like a chessboard one move from check. Is it? She asks. Silence. Not the awkward, giggly kind. The loaded kind. The band doesn't play. The cue cards remain untouched. A producer off-camera stiffens. Jimmy clears his throat. I think what you're getting at is... No, Dove says softly. I don't think you do. The audience gasps, small, sharp intakes of breath. Someone lets out a nervous laugh that dies instantly. Dove sits back now, composed, deliberate. She's not reacting anymore. She's driving. There's this unspoken rule, she continues, that when you're invited into a space like this, you're supposed to be grateful. Pleasant. Palatable. Jimmy tries to smile, but it falters. Well, we're happy you're here. I know, Dove says. And I am grateful. That's why I said yes. A pause. But gratitude doesn't mean silence. The words hang in the air like smoke. Jimmy shifts in his chair. Of course not. We love when guests speak their truth. Dove's laugh is quiet. Humorless. Do you? She asks. The audience is fully alert now. Phones buzz in pockets. Attention coils tighter with every second. Because every time I've tried, she says, it gets reframed. Softened. Turned into something easier. Jimmy opens his mouth to respond, but she continues, politely, relentlessly. And that's not always your fault, she adds. But tonight, I was told this would be a conversation. Jimmy's smile flickers. It is. Dove leans forward. Then let's have one. The band stays silent. The cameras push in almost imperceptibly. This is no longer an interview. It's a standoff wrapped in velvet. Jimmy nods slowly. Okay, one word. The crowd senses it. This is the point of no return. Dove looks down for a moment, gathering something. When she looks back up, her eyes shine, not with tears, but with resolve. There's a question I've been asked my entire career, she says. By executives. By fans. By interviewers. Jimmy listens now. Truly listens. And it's always phrased the same way, she continues. Who do you want people to think you are? A murmur spreads through the room. But no one ever asks, Dove says quietly. Who are you not allowed to be? The silence is absolute. Jimmy swallows. Dove's gaze doesn't leave him. So before we keep going, she says, voice steady, I want to know something. Jimmy nods, cautious. Okay. She leans in just a little closer. Do you want the version of me that's easy, she asks. Or the version that's honest? The question slices clean through the room. Jimmy doesn't answer right away. The audience waits. The band waits. The cameras wait. And in that suspended second, right before he speaks, you can feel it. Whatever he says next will change the night forever. Jimmy's smile returns, but it's thinner now, stretched like glass over something fragile. The audience leans forward as one organism, breath synced, instinctively aware they're watching a moment that will never be replayed the same way again. Honest, Jimmy says finally. Always honest. The word lands softly. Too softly. Dove studies him, eyes narrowing just enough to suggest she's heard this answer before. Not from him specifically, but from rooms like this. From chairs like that one. From smiles that promise safety while quietly drawing boundaries in invisible ink. Okay, she says. One syllable. Controlled. Measured. She exhales and the mic catches it, slow, deliberate. The kind of breath you take before stepping off a ledge. Then I'm going to say something, Dove continues, that I've been advised very strongly, not to say on television. A murmur rolls through the audience like distant thunder. Jimmy's posture straightens. Somewhere off camera, a producer's hand lifts instinctively, then freezes. Jimmy chuckles, half nervous, half performative. Well, now I'm intrigued. Dove doesn't laugh. That's usually how it starts, she replies. The band stays silent. The studio feels suddenly smaller, tighter, like the walls have edged closer. For years, she says, I've been introduced as a story people already understand. Child star. Disney. Reinvention. Glow up. Narrative complete. She taps the armrest once. Tap. The sound cuts through the quiet. But that story only works if you ignore what it costs to live inside it. Jimmy nods slowly. I think a lot of people. No, Dove interrupts gently. Not think. No. The interruption isn't aggressive. That's what makes it shocking. It's calm. Surgical. Jimmy blinks, then smiles again. Okay. Dove turns slightly toward the audience now, widening the circle, pulling them into the confession whether they're ready or not. When I was younger, she says, I learned very quickly that discomfort makes people nervous. Especially when it comes from women. Especially when it comes from women who are supposed to be grateful. A few scattered claps begin, then stop, unsure if applause is allowed here. Jimmy shifts. I don't think anyone expects. Dove turns back to him. Jimmy, she says, using his name for the first time. It lands heavier than any accusation. Can I ask you something? He nods. Of course. When a guest comes on this show, she asks, how much of them is already decided before they sit down? The audience gasps softly. This isn't metaphor anymore. This is a direct line. Jimmy laughs, quick and light, trying to keep the tone buoyant. I mean, we prep. We do research. But it's always organic. Organic, Dove repeats. She smiles again, but this time it's sharp. So if I say something right now that makes people uncomfortable, she continues, will it still be organic? The silence is louder than applause. Jimmy clears his throat. Well, this is a comedy show. And I love comedy, Dove cuts in. I really do. I just noticed that humor is often used as a release valve. Pressure builds, truth gets close, and then we laugh so we don't have to sit with it. The audience doesn't laugh. Jimmy nods, slower now. More careful. Okay, let's sit with it. Dove's eyes flicker. Surprise? Respect? Something shifts. All right, she says quietly. Then let's talk about control. The word hums in the air. About who gets to frame whose story. About who decides when vulnerability is brave and when it's too much. Jimmy's hands fold together. His voice stays even. Are you saying you feel misrepresented? Dove shakes her head. No, I'm saying I've been edited. A sharp inhale from the crowd. Edited down to something consumable, she continues. Something that doesn't disrupt the rhythm of the show. Jimmy leans back slightly. That's not our intention. I know, Dove says. Intentions don't always matter. Another beat. She looks out again, eyes shining under the studio lights. There were interviews where I talked about fear, real fear, and it became a punchline. Others where I talked about pain, and it became inspiring. Her voice tightens just a fraction. And sometimes, she adds, I just wanted it to be acknowledged. Not fixed. Not packaged. Jimmy's expression softens. That's fair. Dove watches him closely. Is it? Yes, he says. It is. The audience exhales collectively. Relief ripples through the room. Then Dove says, then why does it feel like I'm breaking a rule right now? The relief evaporates. Jimmy's smile fades entirely this time. He doesn't interrupt. He doesn't joke. He just listens. Because every time I push past the version people are comfortable with, Dove says, there's a subtle reminder. A redirect. A joke. A commercial break. The word break echoes. And tonight, she continues, I was told this would be different. Jimmy nods slowly. It is different. Dove's gaze sharpens. Then don't stop me. The audience murmurs. Someone whispers, oh my God. Jimmy hesitates, just a second too long. Dove notices. See, she says softly. That pause. Jimmy inhales. I'm not stopping you. Good, Dove replies. Because here's the part that usually doesn't make it to air. The tension spikes like a held breath before a scream. I was once told, she says, that my honesty was bad for branding. That being complicated made people uneasy. That clarity sells better than truth. Jimmy's jaw tightens. And when I asked who decided that, Dove continues, the answer was always vague. The audience. The network. The vibe. She leans forward again. But those are just shadows, she says. Real people make those calls. Jimmy shifts in his seat. The power balance tilts again, subtle, undeniable. Dove looks straight at him. So I want to ask you something, she says. Not as a host. Not as a comedian. Her voice drops. But as someone who controls the room. The audience is dead silent now. When this interview ends, Dove asks, who decides what this moment becomes? Jimmy opens his mouth. Closes it. The band doesn't move. The cameras don't cut away. The producers don't intervene. Jimmy finally speaks carefully. I don't decide that alone. Dove nods, absorbing the answer. But you decide something, she says. Right now. He meets her gaze. What's that? Whether this is a conversation, she says, or a cautionary tale. A shiver moves through the crowd. Jimmy exhales slowly. I want it to be a conversation. Dove studies him for a long moment. The clock above the camera ticks forward. Time stretches. Okay, she says again. But this time, the word sounds different. Final. And if that's true, she continues, then I need to say something that might not land the way people expect. Jimmy nods once. Say it. Dove's fingers curl slightly, then relax. I'm tired, she says quietly, of being brave on command. The audience reacts, soft gasps, a few claps quickly swallowed by silence. I'm tired of trauma being treated like content, Dove continues. Of pain becoming a talking point with a laugh track. Jimmy's face tightens. I understand. Do you? Dove asks. The question hangs there, daring him to answer wrong. Before he can respond, Dove adds, because the last time I tried to say this, the segment ended early. A ripple of shock moves through the room. Jimmy looks genuinely startled now. I don't know what you're referring to. Dove tilts her head. That's the thing, she says softly. Most people don't. She leans back, eyes never leaving his. But I remember the countdown. I remember the hand signals. I remember being told, we've got to wrap this up. Jimmy's lips part, but no sound comes out. And I remember, Dove finishes, what I didn't get to say. The studio feels like it might crack under the weight of what's coming next. Jimmy finally finds his voice. What didn't you get to say? Dove looks at him. Then at the cameras. Then back again. Her expression shifts, not angry. Not sad. Resolved. That some stories don't want a happy ending, she says. They want the truth. The lights feel harsher now. The audience sits frozen. Somewhere, a producer whispers urgently off camera. Jimmy nods slowly. We still have time. Dove smiles. Do we? She asks. The screen flickers, just for a moment. And in that split second, everyone realizes. This conversation is about to go somewhere no one can edit their way out of. The lights don't dim, but they feel darker. The applause sign never turns on. No music. No release. Just the low, electric buzz of a studio holding its breath. Somewhere behind the cameras, a red tally light blinks steadily, counting seconds that are already spiraling out of control. Jimmy shifts first. He leans forward, elbows on the desk, abandoning the casual posture completely. The host is gone now. What remains is a man calculating risk in real time. You said some stories don't want a happy ending, he says carefully. What does that mean to you? The audience senses it. This is no longer about celebrity. This is about power. Dove doesn't answer right away. She studies him, the desk, the cameras, the invisible hands that can mute microphones and cut feeds with a single gesture. It means, she says slowly, that not everything broken wants to be inspiring. A murmur ripples through the crowd. For a long time, Dove continues, I thought if I just explained myself better, if I smiled more, softened my language, made my pain digestible, then I'd be understood. Jimmy nods. A lot of people feel that way. But that's the lie, Dove says. Understanding isn't the goal. The words land like a dropped plate. Comfort is, she adds. The audience reacts, some nods, some shaken heads. A split forms. Tension sharpens. Jimmy shifts again. I don't think this show is about comfort. Dove's eyes lift. Then why does it feel like you're trying to protect the room? Jimmy opens his mouth, closes it. The pause is answer enough. I'm not attacking you, Dove says quieter now. I'm naming a system. Jimmy exhales. Okay. And systems, Dove continues, don't like being named. A beat. That's why this feels dangerous, she says. Not because of what I'm saying, but because of where I'm saying it. The audience feels it now. The weight. The implication. Jimmy nods slowly. You're right. This is a big platform. And platforms come with rules, Dove replies. Some written. Some enforced with silence. The word silence echoes. Jimmy tries a different angle. What do you want people to take away from this? Dove looks genuinely surprised. That question, she says softly, is part of the problem. The audience gasps again. Because it assumes this is a lesson, Dove continues. A takeaway. A neat conclusion. She shakes her head. This isn't a TED Talk. It's a moment. Jimmy frowns slightly. Moments pass. Dove's voice drops. Some don't. The air thickens. Someone in the crowd whispers, "Oh no." Dove leans back, crossing her arms, not defensive, but steady. "Let me ask you something uncomfortable," she says. Jimmy nods. "Go ahead." "How many times," Dove asks, "have you laughed to move past something that felt too real?" The question isn't hostile. It's intimate. Jimmy hesitates. The audience watches him now the way they've been watching her, reading every micro-expression. "Probably more than I realize," he admits. Dove nods once. "Exactly." She leans forward again. "And how many times," she continues, "have guests left this couch feeling lighter because they laughed through something heavy?" Jimmy considers it. "I hope most of them feel good." "That's not what I asked," Dove says gently. The room tightens. Jimmy swallows. "I don't know." Dove's eyes soften, not triumphant. "Understanding. That's the thing about power," she says. "You don't feel it when you have it." A hush falls over the studio. "And when you're the one being shaped by it," Dove adds, You feel it everywhere. Jimmy rubs his hands together, a nervous habit surfacing. So what are you saying? Dov holds his gaze. I'm saying I've been asked to turn my life into something entertaining, she says. And I did. Because that's the job. She pauses. But no one told me what it would cost. A collective inhale from the audience. There were nights, Dov continues, when I left sets like this one and couldn't remember which parts of me were real anymore. Jimmy's voice softens. That sounds incredibly hard. It is, Dov says. Especially when people think they know you. She gestures lightly around the room. Because they've seen the clips, she says. The smiles. The laughs. The moments that made it through. Jimmy nods slowly. Editing again. Yes, Dov says. And editing isn't neutral. She lets that sit. You don't just cut time, Dov continues. You cut meaning. The audience reacts. Some clap quietly before stopping themselves. Jimmy leans back now, hands open. I hear you. Dov studies him. Do you hear this? She taps her chest once. Tap. My fear, she says. My anger. My exhaustion. Jimmy nods. Yes. Then let me finish, Dov says. The request is simple. It's also a test. Jimmy doesn't interrupt. Dov inhales deeper this time. There's a moment, she says, when you realize your vulnerability has become part of someone else's format. The word format cuts sharply. And once that happens, she continues, you're no longer sharing. You're performing. Jimmy's jaw tightens. That's not what we want. I know, Dov replies. But it's what happens. A pause stretches. Dov glances toward the audience again. You can feel it, can't you? She asks them. This tension. People nod. Some clap. Others sit frozen. That's the sound of something unscripted, Dov says. Something that doesn't know how to end yet. Jimmy shifts again. We're getting close to time. The sentence lands like a gunshot. The audience murmurs loudly now. Dov smiles, but there's sadness in it. There it is, she says softly. Jimmy raises his hands. I'm just being transparent. Transparency would have been saying that earlier, Dov replies. Before I said the parts that don't fit. The power dynamic snaps taut. Jimmy's voice tightens. I'm not trying to cut you off. But you are, Dov says. The audience reacts, audible gasps, a sharp wow from somewhere in the back. Jimmy opens his mouth, then closes it. His eyes flick briefly off camera. A signal. A question. No answer comes. Dov notices. Look at that, she says quietly. You just checked with someone who isn't in this conversation. The room feels like it might implode. That's not fair, Jimmy says, his tone changing, defensive now. Dov's voice stays calm. It's accurate. A heavy silence. Jimmy exhales through his nose. Okay, say what you need to say. Dov studies him for a long moment. This, she says. Just that. Then she continues. I need people to know that when celebrities open up, it's often because they're allowed to, not because they're ready. A sharp intake from the crowd. And when they stop, Dov adds, it's rarely because they've healed. Jimmy looks down briefly. The desk suddenly very interesting. It's because the room gets uncomfortable, Dov finishes. The studio is completely still. No one laughs. No one claps. The silence is deafening. Jimmy finally looks up. We're still rolling. Dov nods. Good. She leans forward one last time. Because this part, she says, is the part one usually get cut from. The red light above the camera blinks. Once. Twice. A producer's voice crackles faintly off camera. Urgent, hushed. Jimmy's face tightens. We have to. Dov raises her hand, not aggressively. Not dramatically. Just enough. Please, she says. Jimmy freezes. The audience holds its breath. Dov looks straight into the camera now, not at Jimmy. Not at the crowd. At us. If this goes dark, she says quietly, you'll know why. The sentence hangs there, ominous, deliberate. The red light flickers. And for a terrifying second, no one is sure. Whether the next thing we'll hear is applause or dead air. The screen doesn't fade back in smoothly. It snaps. A rush of sound crashes through the silence. Applause, confused and fragmented, colliding with murmurs, gasps, the scrape of chairs as the audience finally exhales. The band hesitates, then plays a soft, uncertain sting that dies almost immediately, like it knows it doesn't belong here. Jimmy blinks, as if waking from a vivid dream he didn't consent to having on live television. Well, he says, voice careful, measured. That was powerful. The word feels too small for what just happened. Dov sits back, shoulders squared, hands resting calmly in her lap. The storm has passed through her and left debris everywhere else. The audience doesn't know whether to clap again. Some do. Others don't. A few people just stare, eyes glassy, like they've watched something intimate they weren't prepared to witness. Jimmy glances toward the camera. We're going to take a quick break. The sentence lands differently now. Not as a transition. As an escape. The screen cuts to commercial. But the moment doesn't stop. Because in living rooms, in phones held inches from faces, in group chats already vibrating, something has ignited. By the time the show returns, the air in Studio 6B is altered. Conversations whisper through the crowd. A producer rushes past the band. A stagehand avoids eye contact with Dove like proximity alone might catch fire. Jimmy re-enters with his trademark grin, but it doesn't quite lock into place. The laugh he gets from the audience is thinner now, frayed at the edges. Dove is still there. Still calm. Still watching. The rest of the interview is short. Polite. Almost surreal. A few safe questions. A careful compliment. A mutual thank you that sounds more like a ceasefire than closure. And then it's over. Applause swells, louder this time. Not joyous. Respectful. Shaken. As Dove stands, the crowd rises with her. Not all of them. But enough. She nods once. Not triumphant. Not defeated. Just done. Backstage, producers speak in hushed tones. Phones are already out. Someone mutters, "This is everywhere." Someone else says, "We didn't plan for this." No one did. Within minutes, clips flood the internet. Not polished segments, but shaky phone recordings, raw audience angles, captions typed with shaking thumbs. Did anyone else feel that? She wasn't wrong. That pause from Jimmy said everything. They tried to cut her off. Hashtags explode. Names trend. Opinion splits the timeline clean in half. Some call it brave. Some call it uncomfortable. Some call it disrespectful. Some call it overdue. Media outlets scramble to label it. Heated exchange, unexpected turn, tense moment. Words trying desperately to fence in something that refuses to be contained. But the most shared clip isn't the confrontation. It's the silence. That moment where no one knew what to do next. That moment where power hesitated. Jimmy releases a statement the next morning. Carefully worded. Respectful. Neutral. It thanks Dove for her honesty and reaffirms the show's commitment to open conversation. It trends. So does the skepticism. Dove doesn't post immediately. When she finally does, it's a single line. No edits. That's it. No emojis. No explanation. The comment section detonates. Fans dissect every frame. Body language experts break down the pauses. Industry insiders anonymously confirm what everyone already suspects. This wasn't supposed to happen. Late-night TV thrives on control. And control slipped. For some viewers, the moment fades, just another viral clip swallowed by the algorithm. But for others, something lingers. A question. A discomfort. The sense that they witnessed a boundary being tested in real time, and not fully repaired. Because what made the moment unforgettable wasn't the confrontation. It was the refusal to smooth it over. The refusal to turn truth into a punchline. And now, as the clip continues to circulate, looping endlessly across screens, one thing becomes clear. This wasn't a scandal. It was a fracture. And fractures have a way of spreading. So now it's your turn. Did Dove cross a line, or finally erase one? Was Jimmy protecting the show, or the system behind it? Was this bravery, or something far more dangerous? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's talk about it. And if you want more stories where celebrity polish cracks, where interviews turn into pressure cookers, where silence speaks louder than applause, subscribe to Fame and Frame. Because some moments don't end when the cameras stop rolling. They echo.